From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report. This weekend from a state that seems to be ground zero for unharvested crops, and harvest is still going on. I'm Tyne Morgan, and we're from North Dakota this week. As the market's focus moves to 2020 crops, farmers in North Dakota can't turn the page on an emotional and drawn-out year.
Well, this is a first for all of us.
That's as large amounts of North Dakota's corn crop may still be in the fields. Unharvested crops counted as on-farm storage, but with so much left to do, what will make the markets care?
We're going to see this in stages, so it's not going to be like there's a big shock value in some kind of new USDA report.
Trade outlooks sprouting optimism among farmers.
The improvement in the Ag Economy Barometer this month was really attributable to an improvement in farmers' perception of current conditions on their farming operations.
That's as the latest Ag Economy Barometer hits an all-time high. And in John's world,
well, I finally finished something here in the shop.
we're standing in the middle of unharvested cornfields just outside of Grand Forks, North Dakota. And while a CHS Ag Industry Day brings in farmers and businesses to focus on ag issues each year, the biggest issue this year is harvesting all of this crop before they can even plan to plant in 2020. We'll tell you more later on the show. Now for the news. Despite market worries, flooding fears, and unharvested crops in the fields, current conditions are sprouting optimism among farmers in the latest Ag Economy Barometer. The February Purdue CME Ag Economy Barometer survey of 400 agricultural producers rising to 168. That's a 1-point increase from January, but up 18 points since December.
Farmers retained most of the optimism that they exhibited in January with respect to the index of future expectations. That index fell slightly to a reading of 175, but that was just a 4-point decline from January's 179 reading.
Researchers also asking farmers about land values. Nearly 60% of producers said they expect farmland values to go up. It was the most positive response to that question since data collection started in 2015. Well, optimism about the trade outlook helped spur better sentiments from producers. That optimism also being echoed by the Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue, telling me that work is being done and the stage is being set for major ag buys by China. More sorghum sales to China are now on the books. USDA reporting a 110,000 metric ton sale this week. And that could be just the start of some immediate ag buys from China. Despite coronavirus, China issued tariff waivers this week, along with Chinese officials working to clear non-tariff trade barriers. That could open the door for more ag buys. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue telling me that this is the type of work being done behind the scenes to allow more trade with China.
The regulatory agencies in China are making changes that will facilitate that kind of trade to happen. That was going to happen anyway. Obviously the virus is concerning, but I think most of us thought it would just pop just like that, and we were hoping it would. I think that's why the market's not responded, but China had a lot of work to do to facilitate that level of trade.
Well, what if those buys don't show up and trade doesn't get back to levels we saw before the trade war? Well, USDA telling me that means MFP 3.0 may be needed, but that decision could take months to make.
I would say later this year, looking at the 2020 crop. I don't know whether that's summer or fall. I don't know what that timing is. We'll get a sense as we get closer. Are we seeing trade step up such that it feels back to a normal situation? Are we seeing the market still struggle? Are we seeing some hangover from the last 2 years? Maybe a challenge to evaluate which commodities, because we may see differences between commodities, where some are moving and moving better because of the trade improvements and some aren't. But it'll be later this year before we would reevaluate.
Both Northey and Perdue told me the MFP decision is based on the demand situation, not commodity prices. And farmers shouldn't let MFP be a factor when deciding what to plant this year. Well, the spread of coronavirus and concerns about the global economy pushing the Federal Reserve to cut its benchmark interest rate this week, the first such cut since December 2008 during the financial crisis. The Fed's benchmark funds rate will now be in a range between 1 and 1.25%. The Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says the coronavirus stands to disrupt the economy.
The virus and the measures that are being taken to contain it will surely weigh on economic activity, both here and abroad, for some time. We are beginning to see the effects on the tourism and travel industries, and we are hearing concerns from industries that rely on global supply chains.
Powell says they'll continue to monitor the economic situation in the weeks and months ahead. Some analysts think the Fed could announce an additional cut at its next meeting in mid-March. However, there are doubts about how much a Fed cut can impact economic issues from the spreading of the disease. That's it for the news. Well, it's definitely chilly here in North Dakota, but it's a bit of a heat wave compared to what farmers here have been seeing. So could that heat continue into next week? We'll have a check of weather next.
Join Andrew McCrae for Farming the Countryside, a farmer-focused podcast all about production agriculture. Brought to you by Pivot Bio Proven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, weather or not. Visit pivotbio.com.
It's time now for a check of weather. Well, Cindy, it's a balmy 30 degrees here in North Dakota. I say balmy because it is a major heat wave compared to the negative temperatures they have been seeing. That heat also making its way across much of the country this week.
Yeah, that's right, Tyne. We are seeing warmer temperatures this weekend spreading across much of the eastern half of the country after a cool finish to the work week. Let's start off this morning with the U.S. Drought Monitor, and we continue to see really dry conditions, especially down in southern Texas. We still continue to see the dryness in the Four Corners region and out in much of the west, but in most areas, this is actually a decent improvement from what we've been seeing just a few months ago. Obviously, still really dry, though, for the most part in southern Texas. We've pretty much almost eradicated drought in the southeast. It hasn't been quite as rainy, though, in Florida, and we still see some dryness there. Let's look at the change over the last month, and you can see how we've really gotten rid of a lot of this drought in the southeastern part of the country and how everything's just kind of pulled back, especially in the west, and it's kind of moved further to the west as well, encompassing a little bit more of California and Oregon, but we're at least on the lower end. We've certainly been much drier. Jet stream is showing that warm air that's spreading across the eastern part of the country, some slightly cooler temperatures out west, but as we get through the week, models are hinting at kind of a trough that's moving through the western part of the country, but the real cold air is bottled up into Canada, so we don't get too cold as we head on through the next week. Heading into Thursday, we start to see a little bit more of a trough starting to come into the western part of the country with the cutoff low there, bringing some stormy weather, and we'll see some cooler temperatures starting to come in as we get into the following weekend, especially into the northeast. Let's look at that week ahead. We're looking at some wet weather for a lot of the eastern part of the country, all the way from the Great Lakes down into the southern plains, a few patchy areas out west with some rain and some higher elevation snow. As we head into Wednesday, similar areas of rain as we see the eastern part of the country on the wet side with yet another round of fronts moving through. So some snow, especially up in New England, but mostly showers and a few rumbles of thunder. Out west, we'll see some active weather as we see some rain and higher elevation snow there as well. And heading into Friday, we're seeing some showers and thunderstorms once again in the southeast and into the northeast, some rain and upper elevation snow in the northwest as well. The next 30 days look to be on the warm side for the eastern, almost 2/3 of the country, just a touch on the cool side in the northwest, and precipitation wise looks like a bit wet in the eastern Corn Belt down into parts of the Tennessee Valley, northern plains, and up into the northwest. That's your national forecast. Now back to you, Tyne.
Thanks, Cindy. Well, this weather, even though there's snow on the ground, is allowing for some harvest to go on. But how will USDA ever know the crop that's still in the field? We'll talk markets when we come back with Tommy Grisafi, Fran Olson, as well as Dwayne Bussey. That's next.
This segment is brought to you by the foundational partners of America's Conservation Ag Movement, a diverse public-private partnership empowering farmers and ranchers in their conservation agriculture journey for resilient businesses, healthier ecosystems, and stronger communities. U.S. Farm Report on the road at the CHS Ag Industry Days is brought to you by Micro Essentials, balanced crop nutrition for higher yields, from the Mosaic Company.
Well, welcome back from the CHS Ag Industry Day. We came back inside, a little warmer here, even though it is a balmy like 30 degrees outside. Tad warmer in here to talk markets. And I did not expect to come to North Dakota and have a little, some fewer people in the audience right now, Dwayne, because they're actually harvesting a crop in March. But that's what's happened. You saw it on the show already. There's a lot of crop that still has left to be harvested. Do we know how much is out there, Dwayne?
The last USDA report, I think, said 40% of the North Dakota corn is still left to be harvested. And driving up here from South Dakota, I can say, yeah, there's plenty of corn out there. I actually saw one machine going early this morning, about 6:30. They're out there getting it already and seem to be going okay anyway.
Yeah, and I'm hearing from some farmers that are actually in the field that harvest is going smoothly. We saw moisture in the corn come down a little bit. We've seen test weights go up a little bit. So when do you think USDA accounts for those bushels that they're counting as on-farm storage right now?
Yeah, so there's going to be two checks. One, we're going to have a resurvey of the 5 states kind of in the northern tier here, including North Dakota and South Dakota. That will happen sometime this spring. We don't have an official announcement yet, but USDA, in order to get the harvested acreage right, they're going to try and resurvey at least 5 states to make sure that occurs. I also get that question a lot, and in my opinion, especially on the light test weight issue, USDA is not going to make much of an adjustment on the yield side. The adjustment, in my opinion, will come more on the usage side. Because of the light test weight, usage numbers are going to go up. If, from a feeding standpoint, if you feed on a pound-for-pound basis instead of a bushel-for-bushel basis, the conversion rates, your growth rates really don't change much. So in my opinion, both on the feed side as well as on the ethanol side, that the usage numbers will start to go up to compensate for the lighter test weights. So it won't be on the yield, it'll be on the usage.
And so then that would probably be in the quarterly grain stocks report when?
Yep, so I think those will occur periodically. We're going to see this in stages. So it's not going to be like there's a big shock value in some kind of new USDA report. This, in my opinion, is going to be a slow grind upwards in usage numbers, which will then take ending stocks down over a period of time.
So Tommy, let's say we don't have an answer until September. Does the market care at that point?
Well, you're seeing some interesting action in the corn spreads, and the market signaling it wants your corn now. I think many of you, if you check your local cash price, you'll realize that it's going to cost you, you're not really catching the carry. There's not a lot of carry left in the corn. So the corn market signaling it wants your corn, and with all the problems that could have, and we spoke before the show with moisture and everything else, this might be a great year to move your crop early, and we're helping people do that, because wait until July with this wet corn could be a huge problem.
So you're thinking you should sell corn now?
Absolutely. Sell corn, replace it with a call option. It's the math of it makes sense. It's pretty simple math. And if you figure it, if you just hold that corn till July and the American farmer does what they do best, plant a big crop, you're going to be shocked at how much lower this corn could go. We've already received our MFP payments, 1, 2, and 3. That's a signal that the market might be at a good level.
Dwayne, at these levels, do you agree it's time to sell some corn?
Because the basis is so good, actually the price levels are not that bad. And to Tommy's point, we just went through the winter hoping for a rally, right? And we didn't get it. The basis did improve. There is no carry in the market. So what Tommy's saying is a good business decision. Take the cash right now. Have some re-ownership if you want, hoping we have a spring weather rally, right? But like to Tommy's point, if we don't have that spring weather rally and we plant, Doctor and I were talking about how many corn acres could be planted this spring. If they're going to plant 96 million acres, you're not going to have a rally of corn at all this year.
No.
Well, I know there's some farmers in this room right now thinking, well, what if China comes to the market and buys? What if we see them take some corn? What if we see China take some wheat? Is it possible that those are a couple crops that we see go first?
Yeah, I guess in my opinion, I think China will likely come in and buy some U.S. wheat and U.S. corn before they buy U.S. soybeans. Again, mainly because of the large crop they've cut coming out of South America. But if you look at the Chinese buying habits, they have usually been value shoppers. They wait until the futures market drops. They try and lock some prices in. They don't come in large quantities. They keep chugging away and kind of nibbling at it. So what I'm arguing with Phase 1 agreement and the Chinese purchasing practices is that it's more like a flywheel. It's going to take a while for this to build some momentum, but it will come. So we're not going to see these big jumps or big shocks in the marketplace.
If that scenario does play out, does your marketing plan allow to capture some of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And people need the cash flow too. We're coming into renewing operating. We just had an interest rate cut. People need money. Money's tight. It's time to move the product. We had 17, 18 million acres PP last year, and we're at the same prices. It's like Groundhog Day. Every year I'm on the stage, we're at the same prices. $9.25 corn, $3.85, or wouldn't that be great? 925 beans, 385 corn,
yeah.
5 something wheat. It's the same.
Okay, but is it the same scenario for soybeans? Is it the same scenario for wheat? Is that something you should be selling now? And how could the acreage picture play out in 2020? I'll ask our analysts later on U.S. Farm Report.
Your next piece of equipment is on machinerypete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on machinerypete.com.
Welcome back. Well, John's commentary last week about outrage really struck a chord with many of our viewers, many of you emailing in, some even telling John thank you. But John's taking a break from it all this week and celebrating a little woodworking win.
Some of you have asked over the last few months what I've been working on here in the shop this winter. Now, I have to admit, this has been a sadly unproductive season, but I did finish this table. It is a keepsake for the daughter of a lifelong friend. To provide her with a remembrance of her father, I used reclaimed lumber from the house he grew up in and his son recently remodeled. I've made and shown some other pieces from the remodeling residue in previous shows, including a standing mirror and a steamer trunk. Unfortunately, I used up many of the best pieces for those earlier projects, and the wood left for this table was pretty well picked over. Not only did I underestimate how many nails and notches and knots had to be dealt with, but finding anything vaguely flat or straight was a challenge. After several hours of trying to clean the lumber of all the old steel, I settled for pulling the obvious ones and ordered plenty of cheap blades for my saws, joiner, and planer instead. I also lowered my standards from flat, true, and square to whatever. From the variety and age of the nails I did pull, it was obvious this lumber had been worked at least 3 times before, so real history here. As you can see, matching up the grains and shades proved beyond me as well, but maybe that can be part of the charm as each plank adds some character to the top. The apron and the legs, however, are poplar from a local sawmill that I had on hand. The legs are tapered and grooved, and the table features 2 end drawers. I finished these portions of the table with milk paint, which would have been appropriate for the time when tables like this were popular. This plan is available from woodsmith.com, by the way, issue 122. I'm not much on designing such items, but I can fumble through instructions. While I hope his daughter finds some sentimental value in this piece, I know that I did during the construction. You can't make old friends, someone once said. I am learning you can lose them, however, and the hours I spent wrestling with this project brought to mind any number of memories of working and laughing with him. It's no wonder I took all winter getting it done. Some goodbyes just take longer than others.
Thanks, John. When we come back, well, we didn't expect to see tractors running in the field here in North Dakota. That's what's happening. But Machinery Pete has tractor tales when we come back.
Tractor Tales is brought to you by eTractor.com, Sullivan Auctioneer's new online equipment platform, eTractor.com.
Hey, welcome back to Tractor Tales, folks. This week we're off to Kentucky, and we're going to learn the story of an Oliver 1950 row crop.
I like this so much because it's set up just like my grandpa's was that he bought back in 1970. His had the fender fuel tanks, the same front end and everything. That's why when I saw the tractor I had to have it because it looked just like his. I always wanted one that looked just identical to his. It's equipped with the fender fuel tanks on it, which would, with the tank under the hood, that would put the capacity up to almost 110 gallons of fuel total. This tractor also is equipped with the long pinion shaft in the rear end, so it could be converted to 4-wheel drive if the farmer wanted it to do it down the road. This one I got from a farmer up around Cincinnati, Ohio, a little over a year ago. He had owned the tractor for 25 years and used it on his farm and just farmed with it. And I found it for sale online, and I had to have it, so I went and got it. I just use it in parades. We pull it in some farm stock, just stock out of the field tractor pulls. I play with it out here on the farm with my uncle. He runs this farm that we're on here, so I get it out there and haul hay with it, pull silage, haul silage wagons with it, and stuff like that. It's still in its work clothes. I've thought about restoring it, but I mean it's almost too nice to restore, really. I think so. I'll probably just keep it like this for a while. Maybe one day, eventually down the road, maybe restore it, get it looking pristine again. But overall, the tractor's in real good shape. The previous owner took real good care of it. Some neighbors around here, they love when I get it out on the road, just run up and down the road, just so I can hear that Detroit motor screaming with that straight pipe on it.
Thanks, Greg. Well, 2019 harvest has a long tail, and as harvest hangs on, some farmers may be having trouble actually paying their banks. Betsy Gibbon looks at the dire situation in North Dakota when we come back.
U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast. Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. Trusted, timely, tradition.
Well, 2019 wasn't an easy crop year for many farmers, and one that some are ready to forget. That's including for farmers right here in North Dakota. But instead of turning the page on 2019 harvest, it's still glaring them in the face with harvest going on right now. And that's this week's Farm Journal Report.
North Dakota producers are known to be resilient.
8 below standing here right now. I mean, that's a little bit of a shock to the system, but at least the sun's shining, right?
Partly by choice, partly because they have to be.
When we had 30+ moisture corn, middle of November.
DeWitt's is just one farmer in the Steele area who just got done harvesting his corn. Other farmers have work to go. As USDA's NASS division says, as of February 23rd, 61% of North Dakota's corn crop has been harvested.
We have so much time and money invested in this corn right now. By the time we take our test weight discounts, we're underwater on it.
Bankers in town say they're trying to help farmers move to 2020 and still take care of last year, as a chunk of farmers are struggling to make operating payments.
Our big renewal season is from, say, end of December through April, May. And so that's when they're all coming in to, refinance, get their money ready for next year, and they're having to struggle to pay last year's.
Rudolph said yields are on average 120 to 125 bushels per acre for corn in her area when factoring in the losses of moisture content and test weight. However, most cattle producers and row crop farmers in her area have enough equity to sustain another loan, but they need a profitable 2020.
They still have equity, but how much do they want to burn up? In what age are they at? If they're young, yeah, they have time to rebound, but are they in their 50s? Are they middle age? Do they want to? Do they want to keep losing money? And that's a retirement.
Cass and Sargent counties receive some of the largest MFP payments in the state due to trade troubles. Those MFP payments saved a lot of farmers since government payments made up a big chunk of net farm income across the country. Representatives of Choice Bank say many clients have received the third tranche of MFP payments, and they've helped the balance sheet.
A lot of farmers in our area are, 3 to 5, 8,000 acres. So when you're adding, it goes anywhere in the state of North Dakota, $15 to $60 an acre, but it definitely helps out quite a bit.
That, as a USDA undersecretary says, they won't determine if there will be another MFP payment until later this year.
It'll be later this year before we would reevaluate.
Even though it's early in the year, meteorologists say wetness and flooding is already on par with 2019. North Dakota is one place they will watch.
The areas of greatest concern would be the Red River Valley of the north. If we were to experience a wet spring or major spring storms in any of those basins or all of them, that could lead to historic flooding just as we're getting set for the 2020 planting season.
North Dakota sugar beet growers in the Red River Valley don't want a weather repeat, as machinery and crops are still buried under North Dakota fields.
But everything we have left is out here under that snow between kind of here and the corn.
Now those sugar beet growers who were waiting for disaster aid assistance have new answers. Representative Colin Peterson and Senator John Hoeven announcing late February the sugar cooperatives will receive $285 million in disaster assistance to help sugar beet growers nationwide.
They've had a tough year.
So we've worked hard to get to an agreement with the Department of Ag, and I think it's going to work well for them, and now our push is to get it out to them within the next couple weeks.
The $285 million under the Wildlife Hurricane Indemnity Plus program, also known as WIP Plus, will be divided between sugar cooperatives. The co-ops will then disperse the money to growers.
In many cases, we needed to hear, and our bankers needed to hear the extent of this disaster program. We had to get some kind of healing from 2019 before we were even eligible for financing in 2020.
How much will go to each individual co-op or producer is not known just yet. There are 11 states which raise sugar beets. Many of those states had similar disasters in 2018 and 2019.
We have a lot of sugar beet producers in our network of banks. They're seeing gross revenues probably $500-600 an acre, less than it was a year ago on average. For a lot of those guys, it's a lot less.
As farmers clean up the mess of 2019, DeWitt's is relieved he has a dryer, unlike many others in his state.
A lot of this got put together out of necessity.
As these farmers strive for a better year in 2020, while already facing the unknowns of spring. Reporting for U.S. Farm Report, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Thanks, Betsy. And they tell us when the snow started to fall, the ground wasn't completely frozen, so that's creating another headache for farmers this year, constantly getting stuck. Well, some farmers here are contemplating prevent plant again in 2020. So how could that impact the acreage mix this year? We'll talk about acreage when we come back from the CHS Ag Industry Day.
U.S. Farm Report on the road at the CHS Ag Industry Days is brought to you by Micro Essentials, balanced crop nutrition for higher yields, from the Mosaic Company.
Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. Well, back in the warmth here for CHS Ag Industry Day. All right, Dwayne, we talked about corn. Maybe now is the time to sell some corn, but what about soybeans?
I'm actually pretty friendly to that soybean market. We were talking earlier about 2020 outlook. Now, obviously, we had, 20 million prevent plant acres last year. So to gain 10 or 11 million acres of soybeans year over year won't be that hard of a deal. But, driving up here, there's a lot of corn out in the field yet. I know what the field conditions are underneath that snow. It's very wet. So to me, gaining 10, 11 million acres of soybeans to keep your ending stock at 320, it might be a bit of a stretch. It depends on the spring, right? So I guess my thought is either the soybean market rallies early this spring and we gain those acres, or if we don't have a rally in the spring, we probably don't plant all those acres, maybe a little bit more PP. It's a little easier to unhook that planter hitch pin, and then we have a soybean rally, say, August.
Dr. Olson, at prices we're seeing today, do you feel like a large South American crop is already baked in to the prices that we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to springboard off of what Dwayne said, that I'm much more concerned about old crop soybeans than I am new crop soybeans. And because of that large South American crop, when we look at our kind of the cycle we have for export sales, we're in this lull right now for old crop sales. I'm very concerned about old crop prices. I'd be willing to kind of wait a little bit and gamble on some new crop prices, wait to see what happens this spring with acreage and everything. But I'm very concerned about getting the old crop moved, in particular because I know a lot of those soybeans went into the bin at very high moistures, right. And storage quality is going to be an issue as we move into the warmer temperatures this spring.
We really will be price competitive with China until about August.
Yep. Right now, if you've got soybeans in the bin, you're going head-to-head with this Brazilian farmer coming directly out of the field. And from a pricing standpoint, that's really stiff competition.
Tommy, what about wheat? We've heard some issues possibly in getting these wheat acres planted this year, but you're saying, listen, don't underestimate these farmers here. They can get this crop in quickly if weather would turn around.
Right, a couple things. If China did come in and buy some wheat, that would motivate them. The wheat crop goes in incredibly fast up here. All their equipment's big. They don't need a large window to get it in. And there's a rotation up here with our sugar beets and potatoes. They have to plant wheat. It's just part of the plan, and they'll execute that plan.
Dr. Olson, do you think when we look at acreage this year, is it a given that we will see a large boost in corn acres like USDA alluded to in their Ag Outlook Forum recently?
Not necessarily. Okay, and so again, we were talking before we went on the show that in my opinion, the March planting intentions report will probably come out with a 95, 96 million acre corn number. But by the end of the day, by the time we actually get seed in the ground, my analysis shows probably something closer to a 92 million acre number on corn. So I'm a little bit more cautious on the spring planting. But again, planting intentions, I think we'll see the numbers that USDA come out are something very similar.
Dwayne, what do you think the trade's trading right now? What number? Do you think more of that 94 million acre mark?
I think corn's trading 94, 95 million right now, but with a weather premium already built in.
Okay.
If we actually plant 95 million acres of corn and we have a trend line yield, we're looking at what, 330, something like that come fall?
Tommy, coronavirus still impacting some markets. We've seen the impact on the stock market. We've seen the impact on commodity markets, but it seems like some of these traders are exhausted by it now. Do you think this, the injecting fear from coronavirus in the markets, is that over?
I think regardless of how this ends up, it's a huge benefit to the farmer. You just received a 0.5 point interest rate cut. Almost every major country that's financially strong is going to lower rates on purpose, and this has never happened. Last time we did this, that we had a surprise rate cut was 2008 on the Lehman bankruptcy. Nobody's going bankrupt here. 3 weeks ago, stock market was at all-time highs. So the farmer really caught a break. They have low input prices as far as fuel. Interest rates are going down and may even go down more. Let's just not go out and buy a bunch of paint this time because rates are low. Let's do it a little better this time. You're going to get your inputs and money a little cheaper, and actually the price of the market's going up a little.
Right.
It's a positive.
For the cattle markets, I mean, you look at prices for the cattle markets, it's just been bleeding from this coronavirus. Yeah. So is it truly fears of demand, or is it just funds exiting those long positions, and that's got us to where we are today?
Oh, I think you're right there. I think it was funds exiting the market. They had some long positions built into this market, fear and uncertainty when the coronavirus hit. Right. They just wanted to get out. Didn't matter what price. The good news is, I think after last week, they got out of those long positions. Now they might even be slightly short. I saw packer interest, commercial interest buying in there. That's a good sign for a bottom in the cattle market very soon.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thinking of all the North Dakota farmers and Minnesota farmers that we have here in the room. It's been a challenging harvest. Those harvest headaches are still going on right now, and as they're trying to prepare for planting. So thinking of everyone that's trying to navigate this situation right now. All right. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll have much more right here on U.S. Farm Report. Welcome back. Well, county courthouses are a staple in many communities, but in one Texas town, the courthouse birthed some unusual behavior for the late 1800s. This weekend, we travel the countryside with Andrew McCrae.
Each one of us may have to go to the county courthouse every now and then to take care of business. But turn back the clock over a century, and you may have found yourself at this unusual courthouse that dispensed unorthodox law, perhaps even a beer before your trial. Roy Bean is a name that has long been synonymous with the days of law and order in the Wild West. A saloon keeper, he moved west from San Antonio with the rail camps. His workers completed the Southern Transcontinental Railroad. But in 1882, he was asked to assume another role in the wide open spaces just north of the Rio Grande River.
The Texas Rangers needed someone and somewhere to try people closer than Fort Stockton, which was 150 miles away.
Bean had no formal training in the law. He soon intertwined his roles of saloon keeper and judge, creating a unique courthouse of sorts just a mile from the Mexican border.
I guess from day one, this was the saloon and courthouse. And he would, if there needed to be someone tried, he would close down the saloon, he would open up the court and hold court, and then say, okay, court is dismissed, and open the saloon back up again.
Fines in Bean's saloon turned courthouse could be far different than you'd find other places.
He is somewhat known for fining people maybe a round of drinks for the house, so he profited a little bit on the side from it too.
And it was those unusual judgments and fines that made Bean stand out. It was also his love for a star of the day that influenced his work here in Langtree.
Well, he's known for being infatuated with the singer-actress Lily Langtree. She was from Jersey, England, and known in the United States because of her singing and acting and different things. And he was infatuated with her. He had her picture up in the saloon. He would write letters to her.
Bean claimed he named the town after her, but the railroad maintained it was in honor of a construction foreman. Bean also named the saloon the Jersey Lily for the starlet. His home was an opera house, at least in name, and he invited her to perform here. Lily Langtree did come visit, but it was a few months after Bean's passing in 1903. Over a century later, his story still resonates with visitors.
Texas in particular likes someone that's independent and made their own way, and so I think that's appealing to folks from Texas, of a piece of their Texas history. But he was also made famous in movies and books.
Today you can still see Bean's Saloon, Opera House, and more, free of charge here near the banks of the Rio Grande. Traveling the countryside in Langtree, Texas, I'm Andrew McCrae.
All right, when we come back, warmer temperatures must mean that spring is right around the corner. John Phipps has customer support next.
How are the Monarch butterflies doing?
Well, spring may seem like a far cry here in North Dakota with snow still on the ground, but in other areas, warmer weather is happening. That means that more warmer temperatures, green flowers, and even butterflies could be on the way. Here's John Phipps.
Jim Waite from Kansas appreciates our reports on the environment and asks about an update on monarch butterflies. If you're looking for subjects for future reports, I would like to suggest one: monarch butterflies. The monarch migration is one of our most incredible biological events. I'm sure you know that monarchs have been having a hard time. Their numbers are greatly reduced and the migration is in danger. Various organizations are working to bring them back, however. If you are interested, Monarch Watch has a good website. Jim, thank you for writing, and send me an address for your mug. Now, since the alarm was raised about monarch butterfly population years ago, I've been more aware of the number of monarchs around our farm, and I'm happy to report they are again fairly common during the summer. I'm hoping that our pollinator plot is helping. The milkweed stand there is continually improving. But the answer to your question is good news and bad news, depending on where you live. For those of us in the range of the eastern monarch population, some clear progress is being made on increasing monarch numbers. Here's a graph showing the overwintering area in Mexico where monarch watchers calculate the populations. Monarchs migrate to this same area every year. After being as high as 50 acres in 1997, overwintering area plummeted and then has risen from a low of about 3 acres in 2014 to 15 acres last year in 2019. The story is different for western monarchs. Here's the range for that group, which probably includes you, Jim. The loss of winter habitat seems to be driving western monarch populations to extremely low numbers and possibly extinction. There is a helpful report on the Frontiers in Ecology and Evolution website from which I took this information and the western monarch chart. The major point I gleaned was that protection of the winter habitat is the first priority, and preserving and adding habitat along migration routes and summer areas a close second. To that end, those of you who might be considering a pollinator plot, be aware that you could be doing more good than just adding wildflowers to your local scenery.
Thanks, John. And remember, if you have questions or comments for John, you can email him at mailbag@usfarmreport.com. All right, when we come back, well, Betsy showed you earlier in the show the harvest headaches have not ended here in North Dakota, but how do you prepare for planting when you haven't even said goodbye to the 2019 crop? That's from the farm here in North Dakota when we come back. Well, with the warmer temperatures this week, as you can see, some farmers are harvesting while others are choosing to wait. But all farmers here in North Dakota agree this year is one they'll never forget. Corn stalks snowed under, standing in 6 feet of snow, leaves rustling gently in the breeze, a surreal scene setting just 30 miles south of Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Well, this is a first for all of us. We've never gone past the middle of December, and now we still have 1,000 acres left.
North Dakota farmers aren't alone in dealing with the remnants of 2019.
On the corn side of it, I got about 2/3 of my crop out there.
The last time either of those farmers harvested their fields was in December, forced to stop and not able to harvest a crop since.
We just stopped. We pulled out and said, you know, it's not worth it to keep on trying to break equipment and trying to just get it done.
While Johnson is hoping to start back up anywhere from a week to 4 weeks, other farmers are deciding to take the chance, trying to get the crop out of the field this week. And for those in the haste of harvest, test weight has gone up a few pounds since December, moisture falling slightly, and harvesting this snowed under corn is going surprisingly smooth, and yields are also hanging on from fall.
The edges, as you can see, are just way too thick and they're just going to get flattened down. There is nothing there. But the interior of every field, the quality should still be good enough. It might actually be better than it was because it's so dried down, and the test weight should have raised up a little bit. That yes, it's going to be hard to harvest, but it'll definitely be worth it to get out there and get the middles of these fields.
It's hard to prepare for planting this year when the 2019 crop is still staring farmers in the face. But Johnson says that's exactly what they are doing right now.
For how much crop is still out there, there's a very high chance that there will be a lot more prevent plant out there.
While others are hopeful all their acres will get harvested and then immediately planted, saying prevent plant is a last resort.
Well, I thought I would last year. I hope not. We did the math on it, and preventive plant does not work out very well at all for you. So no matter what it takes, I'm going to do my best to get every acre seeded.
Facing the future while dealing with the wrath of Mother Nature. A reminder, farming this far north isn't for the faint of heart.
It's definitely, in my young farming career, it's definitely been the most stressful time of my life. So.
But you still have a smile on your face?
Oh yeah, there's always a future. I mean, if you can't look ahead, you're not farming. So.
Now, farmers here tell me that if you decide to harvest, it's been risky this year when it comes to equipment. Check out these pictures. This is from a nearby farm that harvested this week. Their combine went up in flames. They say while the moisture content in the corn is still really high, the plants are so dry that one spark can engulf an entire combine. And they said they've seen far too many of these incidents this year. Talk about a harvest full of headaches and heartaches. Well, that does it from our special edition of U.S. Farm Report from right here in North Dakota. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to watch us next week as we work to build on our tradition. Have a great weekend, everyone.
U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast.